On Thanksgiving, or about a week before Thanksgiving in 2021, the word woke was finally put down. Woke proved harder to kill than the mythical Rasputin, having survived being poisoned, shot, stabbed, beat up, beat down. It finally succumbed to these fatal wounds amidst a cavalcade of bad press and regressive laws with nary an artist or activist to speak up for it. Some say woke died of a broken heart. Let's back up. Hi, I'm Dialect. I'm the researcher at the Museum for Dead Words. The Museum of Dead Words was built to identify and catalog words that don't work anymore. Not forgotten words, although we do try to keep up with those as well, but words whose meanings have been either accidentally or purposefully broadened or changed to the point where it's no longer useful to conversation or arguments. The arguments become semantic and the rhetoric becomes circular. Words are meant to be new roads to understanding, but dead words leave us on a treadmill, chasing windmills or waterfalls, as the case may be. And I bet you're wondering, how do we know when a word is dead, right? There are a few ways. When the meaning becomes too broad and it means too many things and those meanings become personal to the user and the rest of us can't quite relate, that's how a word dies. When the people who the word was created to protect or identify can no longer recognize the word, also how a word dies. And sometimes a word dies when a large group of people want to obfuscate the meaning of a word so they can continue a deleterious practice that the word would otherwise expose. The history of woke can be seen in American history through mainly musicians, activists, and educators. In 1938, Huddie Ledbetter, aka Leadbelly, said woke in this John Scottsboro Boys, where he tells the story of 9 black teenagers who are accused of raping 2 white women, saying, "I advise everybody be a little careful when they go along through there, best stay woke, keep their eyes open." In 1962, novelist William Melvin Kelly penned a New York Times article titled, "If you're woke, you dig it. No Mickey Mouse can be expected to follow today's Negro idiom without a hip assist." That's the entire title. And yeah, Mickey Mouse was derivative slang. I'm knocking down all of my accoutrement, my woke accoutrement is falling off. Look at how the slang goes with the stuff. Anyway, so William Kelly was talking about the origins of popular slang words like cool and dig. He does a really great job reframing rather than explaining black slang's role in white discourse. He doesn't flat out define woke, but he allows context to explain that to be woke is to see the big picture. This was a lot easier to envision 80 years ago when many people were 1 generation or less removed from enslavement and plenty of them were still working under similar conditions. If you spent even a minute, well, not a minute, if you spent even 1 day in prison, you know how forced servitude requires you to shut down part of your brain so you can focus on survival. That, for generations, was the default mode for black people, and getting woke was an attempt to shake ourselves out of it. Anyone who feels that we can live in isolation today, anyone who feels that we can live without being concerned about other individuals and other nations is sleeping through a revolution. What we are facing today is the fact that through our scientific and technological genius, we've made of this world a neighborhood. And now, through our moral and ethical commitment, we must make it a brotherhood. No individual can live alone. No nation can live alone. We are tied together. Secondly, we are challenged to work passionately and unrelentingly to get rid of racial and gender and sexual and economic injustice in all its dimensions. Anyone who feels that our nation can survive half segregated and half integrated is sleeping through a revolution. The challenge before us today is to develop a coalition of conscience. Third, we must get rid of violence, hatred, and war. Anyone who feels the problems of mankind can be solved through violence is sleeping through a revolution. I've said this over and over again, and I believe it now more than ever. I am convinced that violence ends up creating many more social problems than it solves. In 1971, when the play Garvey Lives came out, it was written by Barry Beckham, he included this line: "I've been sleeping all my life, and now that Mr. Garvey done woke me up, I'm gonna stay woke, and I'm gonna help wake up other black folk." Instead of just being a word for awareness, it became a word of action. Activists were labeled woke, and the call to action was to stay woke. By September 2016, the phrase Black Lives Matter had been tweeted more than 30 million times. The phrase stay woke became a symbol of the movement and of activism in general. The Great Awakening is described as a cult of social justice on the left, a religion whose followers show the same zeal as born-again evangelicals and who punish heresy by banishing sinners from society or coercing them to public demonstrations of shame. You're probably picturing some Game of Thrones bell ringing, shame, shame. But the most that happened is people wrote half-hearted apologies in their notes app, or I don't know, what else happened to people? No, wait, there was that time that, no, that was it. They wrote half-hearted apologies on their notes app, and mostly they were fine. The only time I actually can think of someone being shamed was in the South Park episode where a fictional Jesse Jackson asked someone to kiss their ass. Real Jesse Jackson didn't actually do that. In 2021, British filmmaker DJ Don Letts suggested, in a world so woke you can't make a joke, that it was difficult for young artists to make even protest music without being accused of cultural appropriation. And I mean, come on, y'all, really? You can't make a joke because folks is woke? In 2019, the word woke was increasingly used in an ironic sense by white artists who were looking to make money demeaning black people. And you can see that in some books that came out that year. Brendan O'Neill's Anti-Woke and comedian Andrew Doyle's Woke, written as a fictional character, Titania McGrath, because he was too much of a punk to actually say the stuff that he meant. You know, it's important to note that these people are fucking lying. In the 90s, there was a big moral panic about affirmative action and how white men couldn't get jobs anymore and people were only hiring white people, and the fact that there were some folks being cast who were people of color in films in historically white roles meant that no white person was ever gonna get an acting job ever again, and you can tell they never have, right? The myth lasted so long and did so well that Asian families today sue colleges because they blame affirmative action, not legacy or bribes. I mean, it's really Aunt Becky who was getting your kid not in class, but whatever. They were blaming affirmative action for the failure to get their kids into the most exclusive colleges. The term woke, along with other terms like cancel culture, like critical race theory, this became a large part of the Republican Party's electoral strategy. Former President Donald Trump said in 2021 that the Biden administration is destroying the country with woke. Couldn't even like conjugate the word. With woke was destroying the country. The cat who said fund the police and nothing will fundamentally change. Whatever. The grift is strong though. Josh Hawley, a senator, said that the woke mob was trying to suppress his upcoming book to probably counter the fact that it wasn't doing too well in sales. The elephant in the room, I guess a white elephant, but it's not a present, is that woke is not really a shorthand for leftists. It's a shorthand for the N-word. And that's not new either. People in power who want to maintain power have always wanted to use their favorite power word and to be able to call white people that too. I know there's no epigenetic feeling for white folks where they feel like they're put in their place when they hear the N-word. So the terms that they use to denigrate white people that would dare to stand with or empathize with black people are a little bit different. There's woke, SJW, social justice warrior, snowflake. Remember snowflake? This one, how do I say, there's, talk about political correctness, I'm not sure how to say, I'll just say wigger. Wigger, which is the term that you think. It's a portmanteau. It's a terrible portmanteau. There was also N-word lover that they used way back in the day. It's so funny asking white people to explain why they called somebody a wigger. I'm light-skinned, right, and oftentimes can pass for white. So more than once, I've been called the N-word and a wigger in the same day. Woke religion is the I'm rubber, you're glue thing that always works. It's been done with science, and very self-serious people insist that science is no different from a cult because people in cults say so. So they call woke a religion, a tool of indoctrination. And you know that's a lie because despite the exhaustive work of many journalists, there's no woke doctrine. Religions have those. Communities have conversation, maybe eventually consensus. And that's something that shifts according to need. Woke was murdered the way the word racism was, but there's a bit of sameness in regard to the word hypocrite and the way that was killed as well. Something about the insincerity. And also something about the way that folks started piling on, even ones that were ostensibly down. Music blog OK Player lamented that the death of woke led to the birth of cancel culture, they repeated these antagonistic ideas that woke is utopian, idealistic, and currently unrealistic, while claiming that the largely personal and innocuous cancel culture is lighting ablaze everything in sight, in sight, in sight, while forgetting that even Dr. King said violence is the language of the unheard. I'm dressed wokely for the purposes of this video and all that, but most of this are pieces from my own collection. This is Mudcloth, an African print. I got it because it's not plaid. Plaid gets to be everywhere, and people have their personal connection to it, but it's also just a nice pattern that people wear. And I wish more African patterns were able to be shared and monetized like that. I got a Black Panther on my hoodie because I want people to know that I'm down with free breakfast for kids and the community taking care of each other. As much as wokeness and wokeness in our look might be a way to brag about how good of a person we are, it's also and much more vitally a call for community. It's a way we find a sense of belonging. It's how we get down with people. You know, folks always ask me, what's the point of going and marching in protest? And what I found in my life that it didn't matter too much for me to be one in a number of people who are yelling a thing. What mattered is that I was connecting with folks who believed in what I did, and we could strategize together and mobilize and make things better. It's always been dangerous to be black, but it's much more dangerous to be black and for white people to know that you're smart, that you're clever. That's why your racist classmate on Facebook loves strong black athletes, silly black comedians, and skillful black musicians. I can't tell you how many times I'll talk to some cat who has a problem with things being woke, and they'll be like, yo, but I do love this dead black entertainer or athlete. These are physical actions that can be done in your sleep. You know, a funny enough thing about the music, drums were taken away from African enslaved folks because of communication, because the drum was allowing people to talk to each other. Communication skills lead to community, which leads to the community learning that their misfortunes are not simply due to personal responsibility or random bad luck, but there are beneficiaries of their misfortune, beneficiaries that want to remain in power and not have the structures change. Woke is a powerful sound that will actually, factually, literally wake you up. You might not become a better person, but you have the ability to make better choices. If the woke, the non-woke, and the anti-woke, it's the same people, by the way, stop trying to make centrists for everything, were to effectively communicate, the anti-woke would become woke. It wouldn't necessarily make them better people, but it would give them the context, the history, the background, the option. What's another word for option in this context? Choice? What's another word for choice? Freedom. Stay woke, y'all.